What's up, everybody? Welcome to IGN Game Scoop. I'm your host, Damon Hatfield. We have a very special show for you this week. I am joined by Fran Mirabella.
What's up, Damon?
Per Schneider.
Hey.
Brian Altano.
Brah.
We are here to celebrate an IGN anniversary.
Ooh.
It's IGN's
Wow.
18th today. I've been thinking about that all day.
Yeah, you pulled it off well.
IGN's 18th. It launched in 1996 alongside 5 websites, a family of websites: N64.com, PSX Power, Saturn World, NextGeneration.com, and Ultra Game Players Online. And it was to coincide with the launch of the Nintendo 64, so we share the same birthday.
Yeah, so on this date, N64.com was the only one that launched, and then the other websites followed like one by one. So before the end of the year, we had, well, I say we, I wasn't actually there when the site launched.
Really?
But IGN had 3 websites by the end of the year, and then the others kind of followed. Yeah.
Who was there? Just the originals that people might remember that were here a long time.
So, I think on this day, Doug Perry got hired, and he, he ran N64.com at the time, and then later on he brought on Matt Casamassina, he brought me on as well, and a bunch of people like Eric Macaulay, I think Johnny Simpson Bin too, now is over at Twitch, was there. Chris Anderson ran the company back then. It was called Imagine Media, which is changed its name to Future, of course.
Sure. Which is where the original IGN comes from, Imagine Games Network.
Yeah.
What it stood for back then.
And that name actually wasn't used until 97. So 96 was all N64.com. It was one of the Imagine websites, And
I've been here for almost 6 years, and I still forget that IGN means Imagine Games Network. Because to me, that's not like
Did mean, right?
To me, IGN is IGN.
We still get people asking
right?
us, what does it stand for?
I get asked all the time.
Well, people make up their own.
Internet Gaming News is the most popular one.
Which is not, you usually get the Internet Gaming News like, why are you covering a black cheeseburger? It's just internet, it's not, it's just IGN.
So almost 6 years, 8 years for me. Fran, how long?
14 years.
14 years, and Per?
17.
17, so almost.
Yeah, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
So I joined when the Imagine Games Network part kicked off. So that was the idea of taking lots of websites and then kind of getting them together to form an affiliate network. Mm-hmm. Some of them, they weren't owned by Imagine, like Game Sages, Game Facts.
Yeah.
There were a lot of websites out there that came together. And then, later on, I think 98, we launched a homepage for the first time that kind of combined content from 30 channels. And so, eventually it turned into IGN.com, and we had the logo with the swoosh, the kind of it's like the modern logo now with a little swoosh around it. That stood for sci-fi, by the way.
Yeah.
We merged with a website called The Den. The Den was all movies and sci-fi, so that's where that part came from. So it's like this. It's like Katamari Damacy. It's like this ball of stuff that keeps on getting bigger and bigger.
A ball of internet.
A ball of good.
Yeah.
A ball of good.
I think it's really funny that like the company started named after the N64 because there's like no long-term game plan there. It's like naming your website iPhone5s.com.
Well,
like, in a
There
year,
wasn't
it's
much
irrelevant.
precedent back
You couldn't get away with that today.
Yeah.
Hold on, though.
Interesting story.
Nobody called it the N64. Well, at
the
least
Nin-
not Nintendo.
it was the
Nintendo
Nintendo
always
64.
did Nintendo 64 TM all caps, right?
Yeah.
Like that. They would never say N64, never refer to it in press releases. It's us and fans started to call it N64. And so years down the road, Nintendo said, oh yeah, it's the N64. We should probably talk to Imagine and get that back. And they came to us and they said, N64.com. We kind of, in the meantime, trademarked that. And so, you have our trademark.
Crazy?
They were super nice about it. We did this thing where we linked to both sites, Nintendo.com and IGN64, which is what we retitled it.
Right.
Linked to both. They were super cool.
Did you sell it back to them?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it was theirs.
Could've been
They were
rich.
You have to
We'll give it
remember
back.
that this was also a time that even when this had happened, Zelda.com, they did not own. You guys remember
right.
what it was?
Porn site.
No.
Porn
oh,
site.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how early the internet was.
Does that still work?
Lycos, Yahoo was the biggest thing, Excite. I mean, it was a different world back then.
Pets.com.
Yeah.
When that led
Probably.
to squatting on
Cyber squatting.
Lots.
Yeah.
We had domain squatted on. I think
cyber
IGN
squatted on a couple
PS2.
things, like-
We used to do that, right? We used to register a domain. The moment a new console was announced, I remember the GameCube, we were dying to know the name of the site, of course, to tell our users, but before that, to quickly register the domain, IGN, GameCube, IGN Cube, and so forth, right?
Did you register IGN Dolphin?
We did, but we didn't know if it was called StarCube, GameCube, or Nintendo Cube. Like we know those three.
StarCube.
So it was a thing, and so we
was. It
registered
was-
all of those.
Supposedly one of the names they considered.
Yeah.
It
That's
doesn't
another
even make
episode.
any sense. Those are two
It's-
different shapes.
Yeah, like we make sense. So, like,
Yeah.
right? It could have happened.
The Wii is at least a made-up word.
Funny story. That's how we confirmed some of the names. Was we had got some source work on the name StarCube GameCube,
Yeah.
and I was looking up in the registries of the official registry for everything, and Nintendo's name was on a couple things, the address, and so it matched up that we confirmed they were considering GameCube, and that's why we had the we felt confident enough to launch IGN Cube before they announced it. We launched before they announced it.
That's right.
That's why we went with IGN Cube. So again, different episode, I think.
Made them show their hand.
Yeah, that was years later. But 96, man, N64 came out.
It's like that's when I found. That's like what brought me to IGN because I was searching for how to find the stars in Mario 64.
Yeah, me
and
too.
It led me to N64.com, and I read the site going from then. So it's crazy to think that me in college looking up how to find stars in Mario 64, and now I'm here working host for this site. So many 18 years later, it's crazy. It's like you grew up loving Star Wars, and then you like end up working at Skywalker.
So I'll make you feel old.
insane.
Dreams come true.
I'll make you feel older now. It's like when we launched N64.com, Luca Marley hosts our news out of the
name
UK,
really well, yeah.
was 7 years old.
Wow.
That's crazy.
What?
Yeah.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah, a lot of things like that blow my mind. Like Mitch Dyer wasn't alive when The Legend of Zelda came out. Like,
Oh
it's
my
great.
God.
Like, what?
Yeah, but the cool thing is, back then when the website first went live, there's like one editor with a little bit of help from others, and then the team expanded, but everybody did everything. So when you're talking about the star guide to Mario, there wasn't like a wiki team or guides editor. It was all the same guy who also
man.
reviewed the games, who then later made the videos. So it was all kind of, we were just kind of learning the ropes.
I love that era too, because just like Damon, I think I might have been like a junior in high school, and I got the N64 in 96, and I was looking up cheats for games, and I found IGN 64, and by the end of the year, I would check it every single day, and I would go to the library at school and read up on it. And there was only like 4 people working there, and I memorized everyone's names, and I would refresh the pages, waiting for you guys to make new stories. And now I work with the people that write those stories, and it takes a lot to actually get a story up. And I used to be like, refresh, come on, where's the new news? Where's more? Where's more?
Everything was manual. So N64.com.
We actually, thanks to the Wayback Machine, we can
Oh,
take
you
a
got
look
it?
at N64.com here, Alex, if we want to pull this up. It's pretty bare.
This was on 640 by 480 resolution,
640, yeah, it
Yeah.
wouldn't be this wide.
No
Banner
way.
ads were 468 pixels wide.
So it looks like the earliest day we have is December 16th, 1996.
Yeah.
What was the news?
Some hot stuff going
Best
on.
places to buy the Nintendo 64?
Oh yeah, there you go.
Stores.
Mission Impossible.
Oh yeah, Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
That game took forever.
Got news, games, codes.
Codes for
Yeah.
killer.
Yeah, I remember doing a feature on Mission Impossible. That's
What's
right.
this?
That looked really cool.
Yeah.
We had a
before it
section
came
on
out.
otaku.
Otaku. So that
That
was
used to be
basically
around.
geek culture. So that was
Yeah.
anything like a package of Mario shampoo or Zelda cereal, like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Yeah,
was just new.
That was one of my
Games-
favorite parts, actually, of the front page back in the day.
So if people hadn't made video game cakes, that's where it would have gone back then, but we didn't quite go to that.
And we had a data section. So as a who's who, a comprehensive guide to the most significant players at Nintendo.
Yeah.
Tech specs, titles in development, Nintendo's Dream Team, a lexicon.
So
They had the
remember-
Dream Team listed. That's awesome.
The Dream Team list.
I wanted to talk about
But the awesome thing back then, Nintendo really marketed
picture.
They marketed the Ultra 64 as being technologically advanced, right? So terms like MIP mapping and 64-bit, all this kind of stuff was thrown around, and so that's why we created the lexicon.
The lexicon, that's what I was
Because nobody knew exactly what that meant, and so that was a popular section of the site. It's just explaining all the new terms that people hadn't used up until then.
And people cared more about that stuff then, the graphical improvements.
So you guys took a collection of words that people didn't know,
Like specular
and
lighting.
you called it the lexicon.
That's right.
Yeah, it was.
a word that most people don't know.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lexicon for that too.
Yeah.
So that was
Didn't it make you want to know so bad, though? So you had
Yes.
to read what it was. Yeah.
And by the way, videos were 160 times 120 pixels.
That I
in size.
actually really love that because I remember if you go to IGN now and it's just like check out the trailer for Call of Duty Modern Warfare expansion or whatever. But back then you would watch a video on IGN and it would just be called like Zelda-00_2.
It was.
And it was this, yes, totally. And it was this big, and it was 10 seconds long.
was a
and
quick
you
time.
would download it to your desktop, and you'd watch it a million times. And
Yeah.
you'd invite your friends over, and you'd expand it. You'd make it as big as you, and it would just look terrible.
Yeah.
Be like, this game's coming out. It's in Japan right now.
It's crazy.
And it was, yeah, sometimes things were so badly compressed you couldn't really make it out, you
Yeah.
know? So, of course, every game looked awesome because in your mind you're like, oh man, if it wasn't this crappy tiny video, this would be amazing looking.
Yeah, you're filling in the blanks.
But it was also, I mean, there was a time of kind of seeing a lot of genres evolve for the first time, and that's something that's hard to go back to now, you know, like seeing Super Mario 64
3D
for the first
platformers.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just think about all the games that emerged from those days.
Yeah, I mean, like before Super Mario 64, the stuff that was setting that kind of precedent was like Doom and
Jumping Flash did some of that stuff, but not as well. But think about 1080 snowboarding, right? Like that's the first time where we really felt like this is real snow. You know, you're snowboarding on Wave Race. This is real water. Like everything started to feel real on that platform.
Yeah.
Now you look back and you're like, no, that doesn't look real at all. You know?
Yeah. We are going to talk about the N64 quite a bit before we go. The earliest IGN page we have access to is December 3rd, 1998.
Okay.
So this is in 2 years basically. This is what N64.com had turned into.
Yeah, so this is right after the other homepage launched that had the content from the affiliates. This actually this is the homepage that shows our kind of owned and operated content. So what the actual team in-house produced.
So we had the first info on Sony's mysterious kart racer. What did that turn into?
I don't know.
What was their kart racer?
That wasn't Crash Bandicoot, was it?
I think it might have been.
It might have been Crash.
Yeah, I guess it could have been.
I think
That
it
would be a lot
was.
of time.
Because Crash was the first memory I have of them doing a copy, sort of Mario Kart.
Do you see that sidebar and the gray sidebar there?
Yeah.
That's the Den, right? Isn't it?
This is Hot Stories, right?
Oh, okay.
No, this was, we slotted other channel stuff in there, like from Saturn World and stuff like that. I mean, actually, I wasn't at the
Oh
site.
yeah, later that became the Den. So our
everybody
entertainment
at
side.
home, it's as small on our screen as it is on yours. So,
But you can look it up on the Wayback Machine, right? On
Yeah. There's not
webarchive.org.
Yeah.
So, question: were you guys the #1 site for gamers, or did you just say that back then?
We were the #1 site for gamers.
Out of
Prove
5
reading
sites.
the top.
Proof was wrong. At the time, I think around that time we had about 2 million visitors a month.
That's crazy.
Which back then was huge. You know, especially when you compared it to the rate bases of magazines. But you were still the redheaded stepchild, right? Like you'd call a publisher and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, it's a website. Who's going to talk to these guys? Who wants to talk? It's IGN."
Because back then, to use the internet, you had to unplug your parents' phone.
That's right.
Plug it in, and you couldn't get a phone call.
But
Yeah, that was
compared to today, right? It's like it's 2 million visitors, not many video views. Now it's 55 million visitors a month, right? Just the scale on like how different it was to run the website back then.
Yeah.
Like if you broke the website, a couple people would notice.
Sure.
Now it's
That happens
different.
today, yeah.
Now it's
a lot of
2
very
million, but-
helpful people. Will let us know. So Per, you've been covering games almost 20 years now, for almost 15 years. What do you guys think has changed the most? What are the biggest changes that have happened to video games over that time?
To covering them? Or
Covering or the
games
two video
themselves?
games,
Just
actually?
to the gaming.
I initially meant to the games themselves, but to covering them would also be interesting.
Yeah,
Well,
so
I think covering games themselves is interesting. Just like it's so easy to take technological advancements now for granted. I'm playing Destiny, and it's great to not have to worry about those aspects actually. But it's pretty, amazing in games like that, which they're able to achieve. And the difference is back then, that's why we had the lexicon. It was amazing when they got bump mapping to work on GameCube, and they got specular highlights to do this or that. That used to be a thing, and it's not anymore. So I don't think we think about how sound's implemented, right? Just to get voice on these carts for N64, right? That you wrote about, you'd probably write 5 features on voice samples, right? Like,
and I could, just kind of from experience back then, sometimes we'd see games that weren't finished for the N64, and they'd be running nicely meaning 30 frames per second max, right? And then the developer's like, yeah, we haven't added audio yet. And because you had to trade everything
Certain
off,
physics.
right? You add, the more audio channels you added, the more sound effects you added, the slower the game engine would run. And so they had to be really economical with all the components of the game. And so nowadays you look at a game and you look at the new Assassin's Creed, and there's like hundreds of people walking around. They can realize like these big wars now. You couldn't do that on the N64, right? You had to fight for every little character and every little piece of the landscape that was out there.
yeah, and maybe a better way to sum it up is it mattered more that they were able to achieve some of these just what seems basic now, a shadow, that the waves moved, that the sun was a real light and not just like a color in the sky. So that mattered a lot more back
I
then.
remember reading a story on IGN 64 about the hair textures in Star Fox Adventures. That was just like Star Fox Adventures on Dinosaur Planet for GameCube.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That was like, look at this tail, look at this hair. Like
We
you
were
guys
so
had zoomed in
excited.
pictures. And you don't really see stuff like that anymore, where it's just like, is this the best hair in video games?
Well,
like, now we're just like, you better have some
though.
damn good hair.
Yeah.
Last year, people made a big deal about how
that's
good our
right,
trailer looked
on the PC version, right?
Well, everything was very cartoonish before, right? And then you get a game like Shadow of the Empire, right? Like the N64 Star Wars game, Shadows. And you like look at the main character, and his hair looked like Rocky Road ice cream. You know, it's like this kind of stretched texture, and you're like, it looks kind of weird, but it's awesome. You know. So a lot of that kind of stuff was happening where they were really squeezing a lot out of the hardware. You get games like Turok, where the developer said, "I want this game to run smoothly," and so they pull forward the fog barrier, right? And like you have all these trade-offs. At the same time, man, think about the trails they blazed. Like Mario 64 was all about figuring out how to use a camera in 3D space, and the controller was designed around that too. And it's just in hindsight, when you go back and play this game, it's amazing what they pulled off. You know, struggling with all the technical hurdles of the platform to actually evolve these gameplay elements and kind of figure out, hey, it's really hard to judge 3D distance in a game like that. Therefore, we're going to give you all these aids, like being able to turn the camera.
And that's why the shadows underneath them that way.
That's right.
Affected by the light in a certain way. But I mean, it's amazing. The trailblazing aspect is huge too, I think, for sure.
And the second part is, I think, the N64 really was the first party console. It had 4 controller ports, right? You could play on the same screen. This is the age that gave us GoldenEye, where first-person shooters were not a thing on consoles at all. And suddenly GoldenEye just made everybody play it and never stop. Even though it was so challenging to see your screen, the frame rate was bad, but it was so much fun. Mario Party started there, right? All these Smash Brothers, all these 4-player games started there. And it kind of, that was the prototype of online gaming, you know, getting together with people and playing. And just cool to look back.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking, so I came to IGN in 2006, and even since that time, there's obviously been huge changes, right? But I think the biggest changes I've seen have been consoles being connected online. So when I started, the 360 was out, but I didn't have one yet, so I had like a PS2, GameCube, Xbox. But now, and so you would just turn on your console and it would launch right to the game, and you just play the game, and that's all you did with your console. Right? They didn't have home screens, right?
It was so fast,
too. All this other stuff. Yeah, so like now you turn on your PS4, your Xbox One, there's just like, you see what your friends are doing. There's advertisements. There's stores. There's other apps you can watch. You know, stream movies and TV shows. It's just there's so much more to do.
It's like turning on like a television now, where you're just like, what do I want to do? And there's just like thousands of channels in front of you. But I remember when it was just like you hit a button and you played a video game. It was like, well, that's.
But it was nice too, and that was, you know, what was special about the N64 was, on the PlayStation, you had load times, right, and the Dreamcast later. It took a while to get going. And N64, you just plop in the cartridge. You can't destroy this thing either, by the way. Like, you throw it off a roof and it still works, right? And like, everything just worked. You didn't even have to, like with Nintendo games, you didn't even have to worry about a memory pack because they built the saves right into the game pack. And it's just, those were the days.
Nintendo was so, like, passionate about load times.
I didn't know we had this like tape.
David, I taped it down so you wouldn't like knock it over. We taped down the
I don't need to pick it up, but I just want to point out the choice to go with cartridges for the 64 was
not a good one, maybe.
Well, they had a good reason. They had a good reason.
So that's what I was just getting into. Yeah.
The PlayStation was out and the Saturn. They both were disc-based systems. Nintendo decided to go with old school cartridges because it was the fastest media.
Come on,
right? Oh, right?
But that's not
that's
why.
At least that wasn't.
No, money is the reason. So Nintendo. First of all, you know, Sony had co-ownership in the CD medium, right? Like paying a licensing fee for its new enemy probably wasn't such a great prospect. And they had dabbled with CDI with Philips as well, with a partnership to build a CD drive, right? Everybody, by the way, before this thing came out, everybody thought it would be CD based, and then they pulled back. No, it was about controlling the manufacturing process, right? You were printing money. If, let's say, you know, Acclaim makes Turok, Acclaim had to guess, oh, we're going to sell 1 million copies of this game. So then they pay a licensing fee to Nintendo, be on the platform. Then they order 1 million cartridges from Nintendo. Nintendo gets paid for those cartridges. If Acclaim doesn't sell them, Nintendo still got paid. That was the reason. They wanted to control the channel.
That wasn't new either. I mean, they did that all the way back to the NES and Famicom days, where they owned the molds to these things. And they sold them back to people, and you would sell them for, like an N64 cartridge would go for like $20-30, whereas a CD would go for a couple of dollars.
So it was a great business model for them. Of course, it cost them some third parties, right? Square famously was in development with Final Fantasy VII for the N64. We saw footage of it, and then they canceled that because of the economics. And some smaller publishers had a really hard time, even at the end of the Super NES era, making this cartridge system work, right?
Yeah.
Now, the second thing, speed and all that, absolutely true that there were huge benefits, right? But, I mean, a disc-based N64 probably would have sold way more than the 30 million units that it sold, and it probably would have given the PlayStation a bigger run for its money.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was mostly about money.
Of
but
course.
that being said, they'll use excuses like we couldn't have done Super Mario 64 on those systems. And they're right, you couldn't have done it that way. You've been waiting between all these areas, and it kind of would have sucked.
Yeah.
So I do agree with where they wanted to go with it, but at the end of the day, it started with the finances.
I think the durability was a nice bonus on top of everything else too. Like you said, I mean, we had these things back in high school, and we would just get in arguments playing games and throw the controller around and break things.
Use it as a hockey buck
Yeah, sure.
occasionally.
There was an argument too,
Still
right?
works.
CDs scratch.
Yeah.
I mean, people marketed solutions for like scraping down your CDs to make them work again and all that. Right?
They had like disc
You remember
cleaning
that?
devices.
Disc
right?
Let's not remember, a lot of
Yeah.
people had to turn their PlayStation upside down to get the drive to work.
Yeah.
It wasn't as sturdy as
Yeah,
this
Yeah, so
That
it
is
was
the thing. I never had any problems with playing.
Yeah.
With playing N64 games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just worked.
It's a well-made machine, except for all the third-party stuff. Look at this. Oh God.
Yeah, we didn't have the official.
You've got a
It's like the
third-party
Walmart.
memory card in here. That's
Those
the best
always
way
failed.
to get rid of your
They always failed.
saves.
Yeah.
Shipped with, well, it didn't ship with, but it launched with 2 games.
Yes.
Mario 64, which I've got footage of running here, and Pilot Wing 64.
Yep.
Obviously, Mario 64 was incredible.
Yeah.
It is.
It's my favorite game of all time.
Yeah. Still good.
Pilot Wings was more of a demo.
They were able
Who's
to make
playing here? Who's running into that wall?
It's
That's terrible.
Justin Davis and Tim Geddes.
Wow.
Oh wow, way to call him out.
A long time ago.
How did those guys get jobs here?
He's just running in circles.
This is from our recent 125.
Yeah.
episode we did. The perfect game to show off the system. I saw this game at a video rental store in
Beside
Kansas
it,
City.
Toys R Us.
And
Me too.
it was before the N64 was out, and I played it, and it blew my mind
Yeah.
being able to play Mario in 3D and to be able to look around and the verticality of the levels. I could not believe it. Unfortunately, I'm a little sad. I don't know that I'll ever have that feeling again from playing a video game.
Did you play
Yeah.
Oculus?
I have played Oculus.
So I
Thinking
feel
about
like
Oculus.
I feel like
Maybe.
that's another one of those
Yeah.
moments where you go like, oh my God, there's something
you're
very
in the
different,
game.
right?
That's the next
I
step.
mean,
with the right game.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, the first time the pipe comes out of the ground at the beginning of this in the courtyard, and Mario jumps out, and you stand there, and you're like, is this a movie?
Yeah.
And then you move the joystick, and you're like, I'm walking, and you push it down, you're like, I'm running.
Yeah.
And then you
The
start
analog stick was
jumping.
awesome.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
it was just like I've never controlled anything like that before.
You spend so much time just in the garden, right? Going onto the tree, doing the handstand, jumping, yahoo, like going into the water, and like that was so special about this game is that they knew it was fun to just move the character around, right? And then you also can't underestimate how solid the visuals were back then. You compared it to a game like Tomb Raider, right? Really popular game. Every texture you walk by like adjusts as you move along. Like it was really twitchy. PlayStation developers got much better later on, but when this came out, everybody's looking at the screens and going like, my God, everything is just there and not jittery or twinkling.
Yeah, I mean,
and,
N64 was very hyped. They worked with Silicon Valley company to build the hardware.
Yeah.
There was rumors it may have even been more powerful if they had gotten certain things right and it had more time. But it really, in some aspects, it was more powerful than the PlayStation. But the PlayStation had some advantages too.
I'm laughing at these people falling off.
I know, right?
This
It's
is
like
this is
amateurs.
pathetic. Jesus.
I'm glad you're calling it out so we don't look like
I remember playing like Metal Gear on PlayStation, and everything just looked like it was shaking.
Yeah.
Like anytime you moved to a certain angle, everything was all jittery and shaking.
Yeah, this
and
has
was
like all
just
this filtering and
Yeah, it was-
technology's built into the hardware that helps process it.
It was so clean, and I'm really happy that this game was as fantastic as it was because after this, there really wasn't much to
That's
play
what I wanted to say. Yeah, there were these 2 games that launched, and then there wasn't anything for a while.
Yeah, and I remember that's when
that was a big problem.
I really got into the. Come on, man! What is he doing? Come on!
My goodness.
Unbelievable.
I feel like maybe they had young pets try out this game.
Oh my God.
Small
Young pets,
animals.
yeah.
But you're right, there was a drought.
Yeah, and I remember coming to your website, and there was the upcoming releases, and
A tumbleweed just rolled by the screen.
tumbleweed rolled by, and I would use that to call all the game stores and Toys R Us's in my town and be like, "Do you have Mortal Kombat Trilogy yet?" Because it was the only game on the list.
Oh man,
You know?
I'm so
And
sorry.
then I remember reading things like, "Oh, Smash Brothers, exciting new fighting property from Nintendo."
May not
in
come to the
works.
US, but so Pilot Wings, by the way, was really good too.
Yeah,
And,
I
like,
never played that one.
I felt like the sense of flying was really amazing.
Yeah.
Like when you do,
I have footage of that too, Alex, that I can switch to.
yeah, maybe like when you're using like the glider, it just felt so good.
Yeah.
And so
It was
I got a lot of mileage out of that game. It wasn't as good as
I
Mario.
returned it.
Really?
I did.
What's
I got
wrong
bored
with
of it,
you?
and I. When did Shadows of the Empire come out? Right after it?
December or
I think what
something?
happened was
Yeah.
I saw that was coming, and I was like, I'm done with this.
Really?
But there wasn't that much to it. I loved it, but I was sort of done with it after. a few days.
I held on to Pilot Wings for years. I didn't.
The 64 version?
Yeah, for the 64 version. I never got into the Super Nintendo version, but the 64 version was like, I had just gotten an N64. The sense of freedom in this game was excellent.
This is all I have fun.
And there was a lot of cool challenges. Like, it was kind of a mixed experience because you had this gyrocopter was okay, the hang glider was great, and then you had the jetpack, which was just impossible to control.
Oh man.
But it was just cool, just flying around this island and doing challenges, and like it didn't have much in the way of story or anything like that.
Both games had that never been done before feeling.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's really what the core of it was. Like,
Yeah.
like you guys said, it's not a feeling that is easily. Yeah, I mean, there are people now that are getting into gaming that won't have that experience with gaming, right?
Yeah.
It was like when you go to see Avatar, actually,
go.
right? That was a big deal. We hadn't gone to the theaters and saw 3D. That's what this was doing back then.
The 3D, the sense of freedom was there, right? Like you're just kind of exploring this island. You could go through a cave and use these updrafts. It just felt like you could do whatever you want, which was new to games, which were much more confined back.
I
in
mean,
the day.
it was almost like in the world of transportation. For humans, we had cars, and this was the airplane. I mean, honestly, it was a huge deal, and that's what was happening back then.
And it couldn't have happened on a weirder console too. Like when this thing first came out, it was this weird gray box with curves all over it. The cartridges look strange. The controller is still to this day
Trident.
the most bizarre video game controller ever made. Like you can't possibly hold it all the same way as the same time unless you had three hands.
I'm
like
still convinced it was only made for Super Mario 64, and they said we like it for that, so it'll work for the rest. Like that's how Nintendo thinks.
Yeah.
Camera controls, 2 buttons for him.
I mean, the funny thing about it was like a lot of more casual players thought you had to hold it on the outside prongs when playing the middle stick, and that made it really hard to play. When in fact you're supposed to hold it like that.
we called it the Bowser claw because
Yeah.
it just looks like one of his weird feet.
So a lot of
I
games
never heard
actually
of it.
included.
Alex, thank you.
A lot of games actually included like these overlays, always saying, "No, hold it like this. Hold it like this. Hold it like this."
Yeah.
And there were very few games that actually had you hold the controller on both the left side, use the D-pad and the analog stick at the same time.
And it was cool. I remember, I believe at launch, there were a bunch of different controller colors that you could buy, which was cool. It really inspired the sort of multiplayer feel of like, I had a black controller, my younger brother had a red one, my younger brother after that had a blue
I don't
one.
think at launch,
Really?
because there weren't any multiplayer games, right?
No, but they sold controllers, because I remember
did.
I did the dumb thing I used to do back then when new systems came out, which was I sold all the old stuff. I was like,
Blue
goodbye,
One.
Super Nintendo. I don't need Mario World and Super Metroid anymore. These games are old junk. And got rid of them. Now I love those games just as much as I love Mario 64. But
They were smart. They did the color thing. Apple did it too with the iMac back then. It was a big deal to kind of get people to buy more stuff just because it was differently
Personalized,
colored and personalized.
Yeah,
And I really liked that about the N64 too. There were some odd add-ons too, like in Japan, the 64DD, the disk drive. There was a modem cartridge.
Well, that was
there was a
planned.
capture cartridge. There was a microphone for Hey You Pikachu. All this crazy stuff.
did I never told you guys my first night with the N64 story. So I saved up money for months and months and years, and I got an N64. My parents took me to Toys R Us. I pre-ordered it. It was like $250. I think.
No, it was $200.
$199.
$200 at lunch.
Yep.
Oh, it was
I mean,
$200
With
at
the
launch.
games, probably what.
Yeah. So I mean, I remember with everything, it was like $250. I got
Mario,
the
yeah.
Mario 64, and I didn't get Pilot Wings until a few days later. So I brought it home on a Saturday night, and I grew up in northern New Jersey. We had something called the Blue Law, which meant that stores were closed on Sundays. So I brought it home, and I plugged it into my TV, and I heard, "It's-a me, Mario," and I couldn't see anything on the TV. I could only hear it. and it turned out I needed one of those RF switch things. And the
You
stores,
had the standard antenna input.
and I couldn't do it, and the stores were closed. So all I could do is hear Mario until Monday night when I got home from school. And like Monday morning, I brought in the manual. All my friends were talking about how they played Mario 64 all weekend, and I was like, all I could do is hear it. I couldn't actually see it. So Monday night, we went and bought the RF switch. It was $35. My dad was like, "You owe me. You got to mow all these lawns and all this junk." And then finally, I got to experience it in all of its glory.
What torture! That's so horrible.
Just the worst.
So you just couldn't see it.
Yeah, just the worst.
Were you still trying to play it?
Of course.
You're like,
with sound.
oh, there's water in this game.
I'm drowning, I think.
In 2009, IGN named the N64 the 9th greatest console of all time.
It's a little low. It's a little low.
Might
Where
want
would
to
you
update
rank
that
it?
list.
Higher. I'm a Super NES.
We did like a top 25
for life
consoles
fan. I
list.
think that's the best console out there.
Which one?
The Super NES
Yeah.
is my favorite, but the N64 was good. I mean, at the time we didn't realize it because there just weren't enough games, right?
Yeah.
Like you waited for Blast Corps, you waited for GoldenEye. It was always kind of like,
Blast Corps
here's the
wasn't
cracker. You're waiting
far
for
out,
it,
but-
yeah. But in hindsight, you go back and you realize how many amazing gameplay concepts started on this machine.
387 games total released for the Nintendo 64.
That's it?
No, you say that's it, but like if there were 387 great games, then that would be like more than you could ever play.
Yeah.
And back then too, that was a lot.
So comparison: 768 games on the NES, 725 games on the Super Nintendo, and 1,100 games on the PlayStation. the original
Wow.
PlayStation. So like over 3 times as many games released on its rival.
Yeah, it was expensive and risky to make games for this machine.
The games were not cheap too. I mean, people talk about how video games are
Cartridges,
expensive now, but yeah, they were like. I remember I bought because this is back then. You saved up and you bought every game because it was just like anything that came along, and then you guys would write articles and lie to me about how great they were going to be.
No, but you guys, you did. No. You
got me hyped
I'm
up.
just saying you would write so many articles about like
Because we
perfect
didn't
art.
have anything
I
to
know,
review.
yeah.
I know, and I would read every single one.
I went out and I bought
There's like
Clay.
50 previews of perfect art.
Oh yeah, I went out. And
days.
I bought Clay Fighter 33
No, you
and
shouldn't
a
have.
third.
We didn't say that was good.
Clay Fighter, I remember that.
We said this may not be good, Brian. Do not buy this. Okay, so
But
you
it
got
was like $89, and like that when you're 17, that's all the money in the world.
Yeah.
Like that's.
And I mean, congrats
think
on
we were
buying
good.
one of the most racist games ever made.
Was it
But that's-
racist?
Yeah, it was super racist.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I guess I didn't realize that.
You don't remember the poo poo platter guy?
No.
Oh God, you guys don't remember that game. Anyway, it was not a
Wow.
good game, but that was that was a challenge, right? Like now you have all these games coming out. People love reviews. People love to argue about reviews. You had like 2 games out, and then you were waiting for multiple months for another one. And so what you're doing is
Desperate.
you're creating content around culture, and that was actually, I think, a defining moment for IGN. Is that we couldn't review games, we couldn't write cheats and guides and stuff, so we started doing Q&As, we created inquiry, input, talking with our fans, and really got close with fans. And I think it just kind of changed the way people thought about
You did like
video
a-
game sites at the time, too.
A mailbag thing.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where
Every
people
day.
wrote in and
there was the letter
And there was
section
a fictional
and a mailbag.
like janitor character that would.
Ed the janitor,
janitor.
which was a made-up
Fictional.
janitor who was
are you
not a
talking about?
made-up
He's real.
janitor
Okay.
who leaked rumors. We
didn't-
had the GameCube master later on, right?
That was a mailbag character.
Wasn't that?
The GameCube Master, yeah. From,
Wasn't there like a Yamauchi, undead Yamauchi?
Yeah, so
He was-
we played a lot on
had
like
weird stuff.
Big Trouble in Little China, had
Yeah.
fun with that, but he would shoot green lasers out of his eyes when Yamauchi made announcements, and Matt Casamassino had created all these characters, and that's why Frangoat became famous.
Yeah.
as well.
Frangoat is so good.
A lot of people. I got called in a store once. I was in Chicago buying like a winter coat, and some guy like stopped in his tracks and ran over. It was like 2002 or something. Was like,
Well, you remember
Frangoat,
when-
and I was like, do you even know my real name? Like, he's like Frangoat.
when I first started working at IGN, my bosses at the time, Tal Blevins and Will Tuttle, they took me out for drinks and
Yeah.
they called you and you showed up.
Yeah,
and I
remember
never
that night.
got starstruck. I've met celebrities before. I met like athletes. Never got starstruck or anything. And I met Fran, and I was like, "You're Fran Mirabella from IGN." Like I've been seeing your face and your pictures, and then I remember I came into a meeting the next day. And Pear popped his head in. You were taking Jessica Chobot to Germany to Gamescom, and you were teaching her German.
Oh yeah.
And
Now we have to dusk it
she
off.
came in and she did this awful German, and
Oh,
you
it
were
was
like, "She's
awesome.
working on it. It's great." And I was like, "That's the guy from those reaction photos. That's
Oh, God.
Pear Schneider." Well, yeah, exactly. And it totally blew my mind. I remember saying to Fran, like, you're Fran Mirabella. And Fran was like, I'm like 2 years older than you. Why are you geeked out meeting me? And I'm like, because you're like...
And now you're over that and you're like, I hate this guy.
Now I see Fran, I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah, you run if I'm coming, basically. So.
The Nintendo 64 was the first time a Nintendo console had the same name in all territories.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Famicom.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's
Which was, by the way, we thought still that it was going to be called Ultra 64. And a different name, different territories, Nintendo 64. Urutora. Yeah, which was hard to say in Japanese for Japanese people too. And so they changed it. I think it was Itoi came up with that. Shigesato Itoi came up with the Nintendo 64 name, which was playing on the 64-bit. That played into their ad campaign, right? Like it was all about power and 64 bits is better than 32 bits. And the Atari guys are like, oh, Jaguar has, see, 32 plus 32 is 64 bits. It didn't matter.
I miss bits. Resolution
bits
is
were
the new
awesome.
I
bits.
miss measuring game consoles by how many bits.
Now it's just 1080p versus 907. It's like
It's always
Bits are still there, though.
It's always a dumb number.
Yeah.
It's just like my thing's better than yours.
Frames
because
per
the
second.
number
it'll be,
says
it'll
so.
be tessellations the next
Frames per
generation.
second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what are the best games for Nintendo 64? Obviously Mario.
Mario 64,
GoldenEye.
Ocarina of Time.
I actually like Perfect Dark better than GoldenEye.
Really?
I argue that's a better game. Yeah.
I like some aspects of Perfect Dark.
Perfect Dark's.
Obviously, Mario Kart 64.
Mario Kart 64.
Majora's Mask.
Majora's Mask. Blast Core, I love.
Banjo-Kazooie.
You know, and the Mario parties were actually really good too.
the first
Banjo-Kazooie
three.
was really good. A lot of the
Banjo-Kazooie.
rare games of the time, Diddy Kong
Yeah.
Racing was cool.
They did a great job with that.
I'm trying
Donkey
to
Kong
remember.
64, not so good.
It's
Yeah.
not
That
a
was
good
the one.
game at all.
And
And
a lot of hype. But,
it's weird how within a few years, the 3D platformer was invented and then like sort of destroyed. Like,
Yeah.
and then it came back, but it turned. The Donkey Kong 64 got so off the rails and became such a collectathon with everything. But there were some weird games on this. Blast Core, as we mentioned, was great.
F-Zero X was awesome.
Yeah, I like
1080 was good. Wave Race was good.
So let's
Wave
not
Race I
forget
loved.
some of the great third-party games because it's easy to forget them. But San Francisco Rush. San Francisco Rush was a ton of fun.
Beetle Adventure Racing.
Chameleon
guys-
Twist.
Beetle Adventure Racing.
Chameleon Twist was all right.
Come on. It was basically
like
Need for
Volkswagen
Speed
Beetle?
before Need for Speed. It was
Ogre
really
Battle,
cool.
if you were
Ogre
into
Battle
it.
was good. I wanted to mention.
Oh my
That
God.
was good.
Love that
was a
game.
great strategy game.
That was so hyped too because we wanted a game like that so bad.
Yeah, because PlayStation had so many turn-based strategy games.
Turok 2 was actually pretty solid.
I
right?
like
Don't
that
you
one.
think?
It ran in HD too. You needed the RAM expansion. There
Yeah.
was also, the people who would eventually create Grand Theft Auto, this huge phenomenon.
I was going to bring this up.
Space Station, Silicon
Space
Valley.
Station, Silicon
Yeah.
Valley. And there was also Body Harvest.
Harvest.
Body
yeah,
Harvest
that
was an alien game where you jump into vehicles and drive around. You steal vehicles. It was exactly like
But
what
wait, the
GTA
real-
would become.
You would steal their body though. That was the core of it, right? Body harvest.
Well, no, the aliens were doing that kind of stuff, right?
Oh no, there was that, but I was thinking of Silicon Valley. That's
Yeah.
right. You jump
Yeah.
in the
That's where you
sheep's
take the
body,
body.
but it was the
But
same
they're
concept.
robots. They're
robots,
of GTA.
Yeah, this little microchip spider thing.
Obviously.
Yeah.
No, but both of those games, Body Harvest was a little flawed, but Silicon Valley was awesome. There was Rocket Robot on Wheels.
Yep.
That was.
Those guys went on to do Infamous.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
they're the people making Infamous.
What about
now.
Shadow Man?
Shadow Man was probably not as
acclaimed.
good as we think it was
No,
when
it
it
really
came
wasn't.
out.
It wasn't.
But it
But
was
it was-
interesting.
But it was dark,
Scary,
and it was
yeah.
scary, and it was unlike a lot of these colorful, cartoonish games that the N64 sort of became synonymous with.
sure.
Until kind of GoldenEye came around.
And there were crazy oddities too, like Wipeout 64, which at the time was a Sony-owned studio, and that even happened was crazy.
Yeah.
There were all these weird games that should have never made it out that came out on the N64.
Did we mention Mario Golf? I think that was the first Mario
yeah.
Golf.
Mario Golf
console.
was on there.
Yeah,
tennis.
that's really good.
Yeah, there was this weird.
Camelot, dude.
Camelot.
I forget.
I don't know if they did the first Mario Golf, but
I feel like that any game that really nailed 4-player was a hit with my friends and I, especially because I think I took my N64 to college because I got it right before I went to college, and we just played GoldenEye and Perfect Dark and Mario Kart and anything that came around. It was 4 players, and we were always looking for that next
Smash Brothers.
Smash Brothers.
yeah.
The next
Yeah.
big 4-player game that would come around that would just dominate the dorm room, and people would just hear all of us screaming in a room down the hall, knock on the door, and there'd be beer all over the floor and a bunch of guys sitting.
And that was really the perfect marriage of hardware and software, I felt like, because you didn't have to do much to set it up.
Yeah.
All 4 controllers were always plugged in, no multi-taps, nothing like that. You turn the thing on and you were going within seconds, right? That was so special about the N64.
Yeah, it actually kind of ruined multiplayer for me forever because, like, I still to this day can't really get into a lot of online multiplayer
Really?
because
You're not in
that
the
was
same
the
room
apex
anymore.
for me. Was just like having friends in the same room, and I don't get that anymore because I live with my fiance. I don't have 3 guys drinking beer in my apartment all day. Thank God. But
If you want, just invite us, man. Coming over.
it was just such a great time to play video games like that, like around a TV on one couch.
Like
you know?
I was in college, so yeah,
Yeah.
everyone would just come over and we'd all play Perfect Dark.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't want to. I remembered a couple other that I have to throw in there. Don't forget about the WE game.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
And
Yeah.
also
WrestleMania.
Pokemon Puzzle League. So I reviewed, so I'm a little biased. But that game was Tetris Attack, basically, with the Pokemon theme. It was awesome. Still one of my favorite puzzle games to date, and really tons of character. I'd love to see a sequel.
There were a lot of crazy Japanese things too. So first of all, Dr. Mario 64 we played a ton because they had a 4-player mode too.
Yeah.
So my family we used to play that. But there were Japanese, Japan-only games like Bio Tetris. This was a Tetris game where you had a sensor you attached to your ear, and it would measure your heartbeat. And if you'd have 2 modes. One is if you're getting more excited, it would get worse. So it would it's basically the heart attack mode.
What?
The other one is slow down the game if you're getting too excited. And it was a really good version of Tetris. Never came out here. Tetris 64 in Japan only.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah,
It's pretty cool.
It was awesome.
And
See, this is why I loved the site back in the day, because I remember growing up reading Nintendo Power, there would be a page at the back of each issue that would be like, now in Japan, and it would just be these blurry pictures of like Mario World 2 or whatever they were.
Earthbound for N64.
And there was no real connection to any of the people who wrote for Nintendo Power or anything. But I would read you guys, and you would talk about Space World, and you would talk about Japan, and you'd be like, well, the IGN team is going to Japan to play new games. And I was like, they're going to Japan! That's amazing! And it was like, I knew your names, and I was like, they were like my friends that lived on a website, and you guys were going to play the games of the future and stuff like that. It was so cool.
And we got excited about everything. It's
Yeah.
like, ODT is coming out on N64.
Oh, yeah.
ODT is coming from Psygnosis. What's ODT? You know, like everybody, we were just excited about any piece of software to come out. You know, and then we got a little bit more realistic when we played the games finally. But it was a time of really kind of like fandom, right?
Yeah.
We really loved the system and the kind of Nintendo fandom.
We're also way better at vetting rumors now, because you guys were
Well,
the worst.
That's why we have the term, and I don't think it's a bad term at all, but enthusiast press.
Yeah.
Like, I think
Yeah,
it's very fitting.
Well, that's what it was. We loved, you know, we still love games and we get excited around games, but it was, you know, the people who were running the game studios at the time were all twice our age. You know, we were all like 19 years old, and, you know, so there was definitely like the sense of, oh, the kids who are really excited about our games. Now it's very different already. We still love everything.
Just to
around
cap
games.
that off,
Yeah.
of those 300, how many games?
87?
387. It's more. There's a lot of fireworks still
Is it
going off.
bothering you now
Sin and
that-
Punishment,
Okay.
Rogue Squadron. There's a lot more.
Oh,
right?
Rogue
And,
Squadron.
like it's because I get a little defensive because I worked on the channel and stuff that people I don't think give the N64 enough credit. It's easy to say like Super Mario 64 came out and there was nothing, and that's not true. Blast Corps came out and then some of these others. It's just the wait was long between the really good stuff.
Yeah.
And that happened to GameCube too. Like some of the great.
And it's
great
happening to
games,
Wii U
but-
too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very cyclical, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in the end, if you own a Nintendo platform, you can be sure that you're going to get some awesome games, right? But there are not going to be as many as they are on kind of the other platforms.
Well, IGN published a list of the top 25 N64 games of all time in the year 2000.
How many did we?
I'm
just
requesting
say?
for a redo. I'm
list has
requesting a
not been
redo
updated
right now.
Since
So
then.
this has not been updated.
No, not since the year 2000.
Let's update it.
Yeah.
Oh man, let's do it right now.
So this is compiled by Per, Matt, and Aaron Bolden.
You can't prove anything.
Yeah.
Why weren't you involved in this list?
I don't think I was. What year?
It was 2000.
It probably was before August.
Yeah, it's June. June
Okay.
16th.
Oh wow!
June
I
19th.
met these guys at E3 when they were writing it, basically.
So number 25,
He was
Harvest
wearing a
Moon.
leather tie.
Oh yeah, Harvest Moon 64.
That's a good game.
Fantastic.
All right.
I never played that.
I'll stand by that.
Like, yeah, so they have a synopsis and then one of the writers' take for each
Yep.
one of the games. You mentioned Rocket
Look at the
Robot.
bars.
I know.
Rocket Robot on wheels.
I never played that game.
It's really good.
What was that
Great
game? I guess I can
physics.
read
It was
the
one of those
synopsis.
Come on,
things
it's
where
a
you're
Sly
like,
Cooper
physics,
team.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, before they
Mario
were.
Golf.
Yeah.
Nintendo should have never let them get away. They should have made them a second.
Yeah.
part.
Space Station Silicon Valley.
Excellent game. Had a nasty bug in the original run where you couldn't complete it.
Blast Corps.
Really cool still.
Jet Force Gemini.
Oh yeah,
Forgot about
Rare.
that one.
Jet Force
also.
Is
nuts.
that one really that good?
No.
Yeah,
No, right?
That one is there
it was
because Aaron
decent,
liked it
but-
better than both of us.
I don't like it.
It was
Yeah.
decent, but it was more forgettable.
Then
People love
its
that game.
fans. It's a clever game. I just feel like
Conker's Bad Fur Day in this
oh,
discussion.
Conquer,
Yeah.
jeez.
So that wouldn't have been out by this time, I don't think, by year 2000.
It was a good game.
That's a good point.
NHL 99.
That was
Good
the
game.
last game.
That reminds me of
Hockey.
Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey was one of my favorite games.
Yeah.
On N64.
There were some really good sports games.
That was a really good game.
All-Star Baseball 2001.
Oh man.
Excite Bike 64.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention. See,
Mario
fireworks.
Kart 64.
Number 17.
Too low.
Oh come on, that's top 3.
1080 snowboarding.
Love it.
Yeah, that game was really, really
See,
good.
yeah,
Look,
that is funny.
double
watching
bar.
this.
Yeah, now with a double bar.
Yeah. Here's 2 bars.
Resident Evil 2.
Yeah, and this
I
was a
forgot
big
that
deal.
got ported.
This was a big
Yeah,
deal.
yeah.
They had to get the biggest cartridge ever made.
Yeah.
They had to probably plunk
put
down a lot
all
of cash,
those-
or maybe Nintendo.
Because it had all the
Give 'em a
pre-rendered
deal.
data. It wasn't
Yep.
using, real
Oh, that's right.
rendering.
There was FMVs, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
FMV backgrounds.
Yeah.
And it is a great
Madden.
game.
Yeah.
Madden.
Was Madden really good in 99, I guess?
I never played
Aaron
the
Golding
football
was on
games.
this list, who went on to
so-
run our sports stuff,
Yeah.
so you can see the
Ridge
influence.
Racer 64, I don't think belongs that high on this list.
Above
I
Wait,
Mario
did it
Kart?
beat
Above
Mario
Mario.
Kart?
Yes, it beat Mario Kart by a lot.
Yeah, it's
What was the
a,
voting process, Bear? Come
well,
on.
it's like when you get 3 people together, right? You create a list, and I know
You're arguing.
Casa really loved the spin move in the game. Remember
Yeah.
this game had the spin.
I never played this game.
All the others
Knowing
didn't really
Cass
do
Massini,
it
he
to that
liked
one.
the sound
Yeah.
the car made every
Yeah.
time, and he got
Like,
obsessed
you know,
with
in
it.
hindsight-
Side note, we are totally IGN commenters right now. We're reading a list
I know.
written by
You are the
IGN.
worst.
and we're- That's
It's nice
too high,
because
that's
it was
too
so
low.
long
Yeah.
ago that
Yeah.
we can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that?
Steve's gonna be
Yeah.
mad at us.
WrestleMania.
2000.
Good game.
Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah, a little low.
Yeah, you wrote the take on that one.
Yeah.
Talk about an underrated game.
That's right.
Super Smash Brothers literally came out of nowhere.
Oh, Bear.
Which is true. It was created from nothing. And
Some
okay.
critics blast full of Pear typos, man.
I've grown as a writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's awesome.
The
Second
the
language.
reason why this is funny is that Per will be the first to point out any grammatical errors that
Yeah.
he makes. So.
I'm terrible at that.
Shallow
International.
one-player mode. Huh?
ISS was great.
Really good. Really
ISS
good.
was
the soccer
great.
game was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, those games were amazing.
Rayman 2.
That was really
Solid.
good too.
Really solid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
Long blurb on that.
Whatever.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
That was
wow, did we
excellent.
Get THPS.
I played it on PlayStation. So.
Talk about a style of game that really lit up the ages and disappeared, right? Like
Yeah.
the whole action sports genre disappeared. It's gonna come back.
That belongs in the top 10, absolutely. That was
That
a
is
good
a
choice.
really good game.
Banjo-Kazooie.
beautiful.
So good.
Banjo-Kazooie.
So good.
Wave
Wave
Race,
Race.
yes. So much fun.
Excite
Coming up
Bike
on
64.
GoldenEye.
So I wouldn't rate Excite Bike 64 ahead
That
of
high.
Wave Race now or Banjo-Kazooie for that matter,
Yeah.
but it is an excellent and overlooked game.
Damon, I
It's
don't see
good, and you
Yoga
can
Battle on
make
this
you can
list.
make your own stages.
It's not on this list.
Oh,
but I also
what
don't
is
know
it?
what year it came out. So
Yeah,
maybe-
actually it was after. I think it was after.
GoldenEye?
Yeah.
Yeah.
GoldenEye, obviously.
That comes
Perfect
probably
Dark above
Perfect Dark.
GoldenEye.
Yeah.
David Hammond.
Wow.
It should be. So only 2 left.
You know
Had
why,
more
David?
legs on
Because it
multiplayer.
came out this month.
That's probably
Oh.
it.
It did
probably
come
was,
out. Oh,
yeah.
it came out in May, just like a month before.
Of,
So everybody
year
was just
2000.
playing. the
Okay,
Wild
number 3.
So that, if that's 3, you know what 2 and 1 have to be.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well,
so
good.
Mario 64 number 2,
Yeah.
and then Ocarina of Time.
Well, I feel like the 2 top ones are the right picks.
Yeah. Where would you put Majora's Mask in there?
Where's
wouldn't
Majora's
put it on the
Mask?
list.
Oh, it
Well,
is.
that came out after. That was my first.
Majora's
big
Mask
review
would
at
be
IGN.
really high for me. I really love that
I know
game.
you're not a fan.
Wasn't
It's a
there
top 10.
wasn't there a Paper Mario game for the N64?
Yeah, but maybe
Yes,
maybe
came
just
out
not at this
after.
time.
So
Yeah.
Paper
They
Mario
were
we
now.
didn't talk about. It came out after.
It's too bad we never updated this list after.
That's crazy.
We're-
Are you sure?
Definitely, I want this list updated.
This is gonna be a
Let's make it
project,
happen.
yeah.
Okay, I would love to do this.
I also like the extras at the end, the top 5s at the end. So top 5 imports, top 5 canceled games.
We should bring this back.
Top 5 biggest N64 threats. Number 1, PS2. It's Number 4, delays. Kitty perception by gamers.
That's
Look how they're
Aaron
spelling
Boulding
it.
writing if I've ever seen it.
Yeah.
Xbox.
Top
That's
5
great.
reasons to buy a Dolphin.
No, it was
Number
called
1,
the
exclusive
Dolphin, the
first-party
GameCube.
software. Number 2, exclusive second-party software.
Damon, they're 2 completely different things.
Yep.
Wow, this is really
really cool.
really crappy.
Wait,
And then-
number 4 is PS2
Yeah,
for top
That's
5
top-
reasons to buy.
yeah,
a
like-
Dolphin. That doesn't make any sense.
what? This was snarky, funny
Yeah, to be fair,
fanboyism,
the last
right?
one on the list is top 5 random filler words.
Yeah. Lemonade.
Oh, my name made it.
Pear,
Donkeys,
donkeys.
bah.
Oh, is that because I probably asked him like, "Hey, make a nice table in there, list
Yeah.
some other things," and that's what they turned around just to
By
to
the way,
spite
that's
me.
probably Cass Messina.
That is definitely
That's
Casmus.
for sure him.
Yeah.
See, and this is what always set this site apart for me from everyone else even attempting to do anything like that was that there was personality there, right? Like even in something that's as serious game journalism as a list, we wrote every single thing. It ends with just like, here's a bunch of garbage words like Fran and lemonade.
Yeah, I do think that people really forget that. As I know IGN has grown from 2 million to 55 million, and there's a lot resting on our shoulders, but like, we're just like you, man. We're making the same comments. We think of the same stuff, but we, don't forget that we have the same personalities still.
Do you know what I just remembered? We used to put hidden text in all the features.
What?
Like a lot of the old features.
You hover through the paragraphs with the mouse drag.
Yeah.
And we'd have like secrets in there.
We did white text.
We just blew Brian's
So you
mind.
would
The
have to-
N64 really had no games.
But here's the thing. Like, so all that white text, when we moved our content to a new content management system, it changed the font colors, and so all the white text suddenly is visible. And so some of the articles are like complete junk. You can't read them because they'll say like chicken legs in the middle of the article and stuff.
Yeah, we would leave clues in the mailbag and stuff too.
Yeah.
For like secrets.
Wait, so you guys would walk over each other? Hey, I put up that cool Paper Mario preview, and I hid some chicken legs in there. High five!
No, you wouldn't tell anybody. You would let people find out.
Really?
Right, yeah, and readers would write in like those in the know would go like nice one.
It was good Easter eggs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up this special Nintendo themed Game Scoop, we should mention the new big Nintendo game coming out this week, Super Smash Bros. On 3DS. Jose gave it a great review, 8.8 here on IGN. It's getting similarly great reviews all over the place. So it seems like a big gamble when they first announced.
It's great.
Yeah.
Going to be
on
coming
such a
out
small screen.
3DS and the Wii U, but 3DS is coming out first. But it seems like everybody is really digging it. Brian, I know you've played a bunch.
Yeah, it's we are playing a ton of it in the office. I was at Tokyo Game Show last week, and a bunch of us had it, and we all had the demos too. And before that, we were just nonstop play. Like every time someone was like, "We have to take a train; it's an hour away," or "We have to wait in the line; it's 30 minutes," or whatever it was.
You did that at Disneyland too, right?
Yeah,
like you played in line at
Tokyo
Disneyland.
Disney.
Oh, you did go to Tokyo Disney.
Yeah, and they said we went on the first ride line, and they said it's gonna be 45 minutes to get onto the ride, and we said awesome, and we all flipped our 3DSs open and started playing. It's great. It's amazing that they pulled it off, and that it's something that when I remember playing the N64 version of Smash Brothers and thinking like this could never work on a handheld, right? And
But we all wanted it.
we all wanted it, and we begged for years, and now here it is, and it's just so cool that's there, and it's such a great culmination of all their characters for decades.
And most of it works perfectly fine on the 3DS, right? It can be tough to follow the action simply because the screen is smaller, and that was one of the worries before it came out. It's like, can you pull off this type of this style of game on a small screen? They did a pretty damn good job. I mean, they built in all these kind of features to help you find where the characters are. There's a lot to do. I mean, over 30 characters in that game. Looks beautiful, runs at 60, even in 3D. So smart. Kudos to Namco too for pulling that off on the development side. But now that we look at this, like a former big console franchise is now on the handheld, and it's almost like the 3DS is now the lead platform for Nintendo. You've got the two biggest games, Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, and then Mario and everything else, and Zelda on the 3DS first. It's pretty telling.
Do you think the Wii U version still comes this year? I mean, like that's what Nintendo is
for
saying.
sure.
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah,
2014.
Yeah, I used to think otherwise. I was sure it'd be delayed, but I mean, this game is ready to rock on 3DS. It's done. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It works. It just put it on Wii U, and let me throw my money at.
That's why I feel like it's almost like an appetizer for the Wii U. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. It's like there is something different about playing it on a big screen with friends like this, right? Like you did 2-player with a friend, but most of the time you're not in the same space with another player with a second DS and a second copy of the game because you can't do single cartridge.
Yeah.
That's where I feel like it is a little bit of the appetizer. What's cool though is that you have all this Nintendo love in the 3DS version. Every stage is based on handheld franchises, different music from the Wii U version.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
even though the roster of characters is going to be the same, you get a lot of difference in the stages and some exclusive modes in the Wii U
there's a
version
stage
too.
based on PictoChat, the chat app for DS. There's a stage based on WarioWare. But like when this comes to Wii U, it's going to bring me back to what I was talking about earlier, which is 4 of my friends sitting around a television, yelling and screaming and drinking beer.
Cannot wait for the Wii U version. That's why I haven't really dove into the 3DS version. Like when I go home, I'm just playing like Destiny, being quite honest. But I am so excited for the Wii U version. And it's done, and the only reason I can explain why they haven't confirmed the release date is what we're talking about.
They want to sell.
They want to sell this, and it makes sense that they don't want to tell everybody, just wait for this other version.
It also doesn't position the 3DS version as a lesser version when it's out first.
That's right.
It's like you're really excited for this game. You go out, you have a great time with it. It is a fantastic game. I really do think they pulled off a little marvel on the handheld there. But then we all know on the Wii U it's gonna feel different.
Yeah, I feel like it's sort of like watching a movie on your iPad on a plane and then seeing it in the theater a few months later.
That's a good comparison.
All right, I think that's all the scoops we have for you today. Fran, Pear, Brian, thank you for joining me for the IGN anniversary. Nintendo 64 is 18 years old. IGN is 18 years old. Thank you for hanging out with us all these years. I'm sure I'm not the only person that started reading this, N64 in 1996 and is still reading the site today. So we think that's awesome that you still come out and talk about video games with us every day. This is IGN GameScoop. Remember, you can always reach us at the email address, gamescoop@ign.com. My name is Damon, and we're out.